Hello, my name is Josias, and this is Diving Away from the Prejudice, a literary analysis of Rich's Diving into the Wreck. Shirley Chisholm, an African American congressman and women's rights activist, once said, "You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas." Adrian Rich uses the Diver's Dive Plan to implement a way of thought that revolves around gender indifference. Through, through first-person narration of the protagonists of the poem, we right off the bat get an insight to the narrator's thoughts. The poem starts off by our narrator preparing for a dive down to a sunken ship. The preparation of tools and equipment needed for the dive is ghastly. It sounds as if she is preparing for an assassination of some sort by putting on body armor, sheathing a knife, and putting on, quote, an awkward mask. This dark diction, used to illustrate a rather neutral activity, is meant to show readers that our protagonist is preparing to do something rather difficult and maybe damaging to themselves. This supports my thesis that the poem is in Rich's way of bringing attention towards gender indifference. In the 70s, when this poem was written, women's rights movements were active all across the United States, so the tone and the word diction of the first stanza gives readers a sense of passion or importance to the message at hand. Rich uses the metaphor of the sea, the wreck, and the story of how the ship is wrecked. A great stanza that illustrates all three symbols at once is, quote, "The thing I came for, the wreck, and not the story of the wreck. The thing itself and not the myth. The drowned face always staring towards the sun. The evidence of damage, worn by salt and sway into this threadbare beauty, the ribs of the disaster." Rich wants to bring attention to the wreck itself. I believe that the wreck is meant to represent the damaged, lesser state that the female gender is constantly being constricted to. Women are constantly being put down and thought of as lesser. You could say women are the, quote, the drowned face always staring towards the sun. That being so, the entity that's constantly causing the, quote, the wear by salt and sway into the threadbare beauty. That entity represents the toxic masculinity that is purposely implemented to claim the superior gender. Think of the salt and sway as the waves of discrimination routinely and constantly oppressing females all around the world. Richard's approach of stating that her agenda is to neglect the story of how the ship sunk is meant as a type of appeasement towards the female's oppressor. It's her way of putting an unforgivable crossing behind her, in an attempt for a greater peace. Her goal is well evident in a single line of the 8th stanza of the poem. I am, quote, I am she, I am he. She reiterates indifference in the conclusion of her She reiterates indifference in the conclusion of her poem by grouping, once again, quote, we are, I am, and you are, together to suggest a union and no indifference. So in conclusion, the literary techniques used such as symbolism, diction, and tone are important factors that are evident when reading Diving into the Wreck. We analyze these techniques and use them to decipher themes and messages from poems and stories. In Rich's poem, we use the diction, three main metaphors, and the tone of the narrator to interpret the message of indifference around gender that Rich is trying to portray. Thank you, and that is it.